A woman born into poverty in the American South in 1867, who was the daughter of formerly enslaved parents, who was orphaned by age 7, married by age 14, and widowed with a young daughter by age 20, who spent the following 2 decades working as a laundress in St. Louis for wages that never exceeded $1.50 per day, became by her early 50s the first self-made female millionaire in United States history, building her specific fortune not from inherited capital, not from professional credentials, and not from access to any financial institution willing to lend to a black woman in the American South or Midwest in the early 20th century, but from a hair care product she developed for her own use, manufactured in her own home, and sold door to door in her own neighborhood before she had any employee other than herself. Her name was Sarah Breedlove, known professionally and historically as Madam C.J. Walker. Born on December 23, 1867, on a Louisiana cotton plantation where her parents had been enslaved until the end of the Civil War 2 years earlier, she spent her early childhood in conditions of acute material deprivation that most people who study her life have described as among the most genuinely difficult starting circumstances of any major figure in American business history. The specific combination of poverty, racial segregation, early orphanhood, early marriage, early widowhood, and the specific structural exclusion of black women from essentially every formal economic pathway that might otherwise have offered upward mobility was not a single obstacle. It was a compound, mutually reinforcing set of conditions that would have been genuinely and rationally difficult to imagine overcoming. Morgan Housel has written that genuinely transformative personal financial outcomes sometimes originate specifically in problems so personal and so immediate that no established commercial solution exists for them yet, and that the people most likely to recognize and build those solutions are specifically the people experiencing the problem most directly, not the professional market researchers or the venture investors who evaluate commercial opportunities from a safe distance. Walker's specific hair care problem, the chronic scalp condition, possibly related to poor sanitation, stress, or nutritional deficiency, that was causing significant hair loss, was not her unique problem. It was a specific, widespread, and almost entirely unaddressed problem affecting a large and commercially significant population of Black American women who had essentially no access to hair care products specifically formulated for their hair texture and scalp conditions. Walker has described the initial inspiration for her formula as coming to her in a dream, in which a large black man appeared and told her the specific ingredients to use, a story that subsequent historians have evaluated with varying degrees of literal credulity but that all have agreed reflects her specific personal experience of arriving at a formulation through a process that was less systematic laboratory research than personal experimentation driven by direct personal need. Whatever the specific origin of the initial formulation, the commercial vehicle through which she built a business from it was not mystical. It was specifically the recognition, beginning in 1905 when she relocated to Denver, Colorado, that the product worked well enough that other women wanted it, and the specific decision to sell it directly, door to door, to those women, rather than waiting for any established retail or distribution channel to take an interest in a product made by a black woman in a domestic kitchen. Benjamin Graham's investment philosophy emphasized that genuine commercial value begins with a specific product or service that measurably solves a real, demonstrable problem for a specific group of customers who have no currently adequate alternative solution. Walker's specific Wonderful Hair Grower, and the expanded line of scalp treatment and hair care products she subsequently developed, addressed a real, measurably large, and genuinely underserved market with a product that demonstrably worked for the specific customers who tried it. The conventional retail and commercial infrastructure of the early 20th century United States was not going to recognize or distribute that product on her behalf. The specific solution she implemented instead, direct sales through a personally trained network of black female agents, was not a second-best alternative to conventional retail. It was a specifically superior distribution mechanism for reaching her specific customer base, which conventional retail was neither equipped nor motivated to serve. Daniel Kahneman's research into how people systematically underestimate the magnitude of structural disadvantages faced by members of marginalized groups, tending to attribute individual outcomes primarily to individual effort and ability while discounting the specific structural conditions that shape the range of possible outcomes, is directly relevant to understanding what Walker's specific commercial achievement actually required. Building a manufacturing and distribution business from essentially no capital, in an era and a region where no bank would extend credit to a black woman, with no formal business education, while simultaneously managing the specific daily realities of being a black woman in the racially segregated early 20th century United States, required not just business acumen but a specific sustained ability to operate effectively in conditions of structural disadvantage that most accounts of entrepreneurial success simply do not incorporate into their analytical framework. Walker relocated to Indianapolis in 1910 and established a factory and training school that became the operational headquarters of her growing manufacturing and sales organization. By that point she had built a national network of sales agents, women she trained personally in her specific products and sales methods, providing them with both the product knowledge and the business skills to operate as independent sales representatives across communities that had no other access to her products. At its peak, her organization reportedly employed or contracted with somewhere between 20 and 40,000 agents across the United States and internationally. Robert Kiyosaki's core distinction between working for money and building systems that produce income independent of your personal daily labor applies directly to the specific organizational structure Walker built through her agent network. The specific sales model she designed did not require her personal physical presence at every transaction. Each trained agent was a largely independent commercial operator who purchased products from Walker's manufacturing operation and resold them directly to customers in her own specific geographic territory. Walker's income from that network grew as the network grew, creating a specific compounding dynamic in which each additional trained agent added a specific increment of distribution capacity that generated its own ongoing revenue stream independent of any additional personal effort on Walker's part. Here's an honest complication worth including. The specific dollar figure most commonly cited for Walker's fortune at the time of her death in 1919, approximately $600,000, equivalent to roughly $10 million in contemporary purchasing power terms, has been assessed by multiple historians with varying degrees of precision, and the specific claim that she was the first self-made female millionaire in American history, while widely repeated and broadly accepted, is based on estimates of her net worth at various points during her life rather than a precisely documented accounting. The commercial achievement is real and genuinely extraordinary by any reasonable standard. The specific numerical claims attached to it should be understood as informed estimates rather than audited figures. George S. Clason's fundamental advice about consistently setting aside a portion of every dollar earned and reinvesting it into productive activities rather than consuming it applies here in a specifically instructive direction. Walker's specific financial discipline during the years when her business was growing, her willingness to reinvest profits into expanded manufacturing capacity, agent training, and eventually the construction of a factory and school, rather than immediately improving her personal consumption level in proportion to her rising income, was the specific capital allocation behavior that converted a successful door-to-door sales operation into a genuinely scaled manufacturing and distribution enterprise. This isn't a simple story about personal determination overcoming all obstacles, a framing that tends to understate the severity of the specific structural conditions Walker navigated and to imply that similar determination in similar conditions reliably produces similar results. What Walker's specific story illustrates is something both more instructive and more honest, that genuinely significant commercial achievement is sometimes most accessible to people who experience a specific problem most acutely, who have no existing solution available to them, and who consequently have both the personal motivation to develop a solution and the direct market knowledge to make that solution genuinely useful to the specific customers it is intended to serve. So here's a question worth sitting with. In your own professional or personal life, is there a specific recurring problem you experience that has no currently adequate commercial solution? And have you considered seriously whether the specific personal knowledge you have of that problem, precisely because you experience it directly, might be the most valuable input to building a genuinely useful solution for the larger group of people experiencing the same problem? Before you leave, I want to hear from you. Have you ever built something, a product, a service, a tool, a process, specifically because you personally needed it and nothing adequate existed yet, and found that other people needed it just as much as you did? Read a few comments before you go. Some of the most practically grounded insights on this channel come from people who've answered that question with specific personal examples. Next week, I'll pick one comment and send its author one of the books that inspired this channel. And if these stories help you think differently about money, you'll find a way to support future research in the description. Every contribution helps buy books, access research, and keep this content free for everyone. Remember this. Madam C.J. Walker did not become America's first self-made female millionaire by gaining access to capital, professional credentials, or established commercial distribution networks, because none of those things were available to a black woman in the early 20th century United States. She built it by making a product she personally needed, selling it to neighbors who needed it too, training tens of thousands of other women to do the same thing, and reinvesting enough of what she earned into expanding that system that it eventually outgrew anything that the structural disadvantages she faced had any power to contain.